My name is Robert Mai, and I haven't scored a stop-motion animation feature for Leica Studios yet. This is I'm waiting for the dog to stop. This is I haven't made it yet. Say the next thing.
This is an indie not production.
Podcast.
Oh, it's a production.
Okay, sure. Yeah, it is a production. I'm here with Sam Hong.
I'm here with Yannick.
Just first name, okay. Sam is taking the place of Hayden today.
I just feel like I don't say your last name the right way.
That's okay. Just Yannick. And today who do we have today?
Robert May.
Yeah, Mai.
Mai? Is it?
I think it's Mai. He said it. He said his own name.
We'll
cut this out. We'll cut this out.
Because we don't.
It's gonna. Yeah, no, we know his name. Our guest today, we know his name, and
we do know his name.
He's a
Insert
composer.
here.
He's a composer, which we've never had a composer or any type of musician on the podcast. So we're very excited to hear about all the ins and outs of that. Yeah.
Feeling good.
Yeah. Please enjoy.
We'll miss you, Hayden.
Enjoy. It's a weird thing. Yeah, we miss Hayden. You better enjoy.
You better.
Yeah, buddy.
Sit in it. Tune up.
Tune up. Don't tune in. Tune up.
Tune up.
Tune up. Tune up. Okay, bye. Making it for me means being financially comfortable enough with the work that I'm getting where I don't have to constantly think about lining up the next gig, where I can be a lot more selective and where I can kind of like just focus on just maybe 1 or 2 feature films a year, right? Where I can just pick the things where I really want to do and focus the rest of my time on just living my life with my family, but, kind of just like traveling the world, like not just being defined by like the gigs that I get, but by just being able to use music as a way to fulfill what else I want to do in my life. I really like what you said about when the message to yourself in the future also that you are not defined by your projects. Yeah. It sounds kind of like that's really important to you. Because you can be on your deathbed and you can be like, oh boy, I'm glad I worked on that Marvel film, but my family sure disowned me. So it's like, you don't want that to happen, right? Like
Do you make music for yourself, just for like your own?
Occasionally, yeah. Like I had some projects that I just put on the back burner for too long. Like I always been wanting to do like a piano and cello concerto. It's tough to like set enough time aside to like kind of work on your own stuff. So like I always wanted to do that. I always want to like do some solo albums, but it's just also that confidence, right? Of like, can I like do something that's not attached to like a project or like visuals or like a game, right? And it's something I always wanted to do though. I think that maybe like when I definitely want to get closer to retirement and like kind of phase out like the actual studio stuff. And it sounds like making it for you would kind of allow, like what you said, making it for you would kind of allow you to do some of those personal things more because you're really just doing those 1 or 2 projects a year. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, that's, I think, like not having to be just beholden to like a work schedule, right? Like all the time. Like it's like it's not a freedom that's afforded to like a lot of people like all the time, right? So it's like it's just something I want to strive for, to not always have to worry about like just getting a next gig or pitching myself for something, right? Like it's I'm doing it out of necessity now because like it's just something you have to do. It's like the reality of work. It's not my favorite part of being a composer. Yeah.
Right.
So I met Robert while PAing on my actually first project ever in LA, which was a really low budget feature film that a mutual friend and producer of ours was putting on. And Robert at the time was a script supervisor on that project. And then it was actually I decided it was going to be the last feature I ever script supervised. Like I was just about to spread my wings in composing. I was like, I'm going to wrap it up with like just a great production with like a producer that I trust a lot. And then that's where I met you. And then I never script supervised another feature after that one. That was the very last one. Yeah.
Wow.
So actually kind of like a big turning point moment. Yeah. I guess maybe we were talking on there and you shared that you were a composer. And then like a year or so later, maybe more, I think it was like 2 years later when I was looking for somebody to compose my short film.
you came up, and then we kind of reconnected, and you did a really good job composing for my short film, and here we are.
Well, you did a great job making the movie, so that kind of makes my job a lot easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I've definitely, we can talk about it, but I've definitely had to work on films where they think music has to save the movie or like make up for a lot of what's not in the movie.
Yeah.
And that just is not possible to do, you know.
Yeah.
But I can definitely talk about that later. But like it always is so great to work with people that actually understand how movies work, how like humans work, how like human behavior is like compelling on screen. And like obviously your film does that in spades, which is why I was like, I gotta work with you and I gotta work on this film. And it was definitely a journey too, to kind of find the sound of it and kind of like figure out what was working, what wasn't working, and kind of throw things out the window and kind of like start again from scratch and just like go to the bare essentials, right? But that's what makes it fun, right? Just to like, you never know what you're doing when you're writing music. Honestly, you don't have all the answers. You have to just kind of figure shit out with the director when you're working, right?
Kind of starting from ground zero every time. I remember, like our approach was like very minimalist. There's like some chimes and stuff like that, except for one scene, which I had like a piece already picked out, a piece of music that I really liked. And I really liked that, what you said about that little piece of music, because I was loved it so much and kind of wanted to use that. And I was like, oh, maybe we just use that. But you said, no, like I'm composing this, I'm doing the whole thing. and I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like I did bring you onto this project to make this also your project. And it turned out great. And we just used it for inspiration, but like you turned that into something that you felt passionate about. And it was an interesting experience. I've never worked with a composer before. So it was very formative.
That was fun. That was like a very like semi-improvisational approach we did to the film, to be honest, because I think I had an initial approach that was like a lot heavier and like kind of bigger sounding, like a lot more strings, and like it kind of overwhelmed the picture. You were totally right about it, like overwhelming the picture and kind of like stepping over like what the actors were doing. And I think you showed up at the studio and just kind of started playing random things on a keyboard. I was just kind of like playing around with sounds. We were just kind of like throwing things at the screen to see what works, right? And I think we just had like a little 3 or 4 note melody that we just kept playing, and then I just at some point I was just like playing it to the screen. I was just matching it to how they're walking on the screen and how they're like stepping around, how fast the cuts were going when they were like cartwheeling, right? Like I was like, I'm gonna make the notes cartwheel with them, you know? And you're like, oh, that's good. You like that a lot. And I was like, okay, I'll just have to make it looser and flow a lot more with like the actors and almost like just be an actor myself, kind of just like interacting like almost in real time to what they were doing on screen. And that's not something I tend to do a lot in a lot of projects. So I think it was like just a really fun, different way, right, to just kind of see what sticks.
It's interesting. Do you have normally like a process that you follow? I know you said like the film that you did with Yannick was definitely a lot more improv, but do you have like a process? Like how do you go about starting?
Like, I like to think I have a process that I kind of stick to, but then I tend to throw it out depending on like director I talk to and the director I work with, because like so many directors have such radically different ways of interpreting music and like emotional ways, like how they react emotionally to like happy music and sad music, what they think is happy music and sad music, and like instruments. They like, some directors love piano, some directors hate piano. It's like that director, I can't use piano, I will not use piano with that director loves string, that director likes all electronic EDM music, I'm gonna just learn how to do EDM music and then like have that in my toolkit, right? So like I mean, like, really my process is I always actually start as a screenwriter and actor, and I always talk to the director that way. And I just read their script and I watch their film, and I kind of just like process things as an actor would, not as a musician would, because not a lot of directors are comfortable with talking about music, right? Or not a lot of them are like naturally musicians, and that actually works a lot better for me, because that way we don't have like that technical talk to get in the way. It's just focusing on just what's in your heart. Like why did you make the story in the first place? Like why is this the film that you're making? And what can I do to bridge the gap, right? Like,
to like the creative process.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
You seem like you're a very prolific composer. Like you said, we were just talking, you said you've done already 2 features this year and everything. And you've done over like 1,000 projects, right? Is that correct?
Wow.
Yeah. Well, maybe not 1,000. I would say like between 150 to 200 at this
You
point.
lied on Instagram?
I lied on Instagram. Did I say 1,000?
You
Oh
did
my
say
god.
1,000.
Oh god. I got to change that. Please don't cancel me.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
We'll cut that out.
It's fine.
But yeah, I'm just curious how music kind of entered your life and how you started your 100 project journey. Maybe you want to take us way back.
Yeah, because well, music was always in my family actually. Because like my mom played piano, my dad was he played actually bass guitar in a band back in the 70s or 80s, and he took like a course in like electronic music. So he like I think he was the most influential person, kind of like actually like buying me like my first like electronic writing program, like DAW, like digital audio workstations, what they're called, right? It's like what composers use to write music with. So he got me that, and I kind of like started like playing around with that. And I also took violin lessons when I was younger, but I kind of hated violin when I was younger because I think the teachers were just so strict. And so like I remember like a Russian teacher that just made me stand in place and just bow in front of a mirror for like 20 minutes straight, and I might have cried a few times in some of the lessons because she was just scary. Oh god, like I
used to play the violin too,
Yeah.
and like I'm just thinking about like the bow exercise.
It was torture.
Like my teacher definitely was not like that, but I could 100% see
Did you
why.
cry
like,
as well?
No, we did things like a grease medley. Like
Yeah.
it's like public school. Like it's just here for the vibes. Like the violin. We did like Pirates of the Caribbean. Not like that.
Oh
No.
god, I wish I had that. No, like my parents are very serious about like you got to like be a classical violinist, like kind of learn this, like go to orchestra, right? And then, but I think my attitude of music changed when I played in orchestras and I got to be in a string section for the first time and just like interact with other people and kind of like be part of like a greater like just
Ensemble?
spirit, ensemble,
Yeah.
and just like playing like cool, like Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, like some like we played Forrest Gump once. I think like playing some film music pieces too, like kind of started sparking that interest because I also loved the movies when I was growing up. So it's just like and finding about John Williams and Hans Zimmer and kind of like Danny Elfman and other people like, oh, people write music for a living, and I love music. So, but I don't think I made the connection that I could ever do something like that because I never really took lessons in writing music when I was younger. I like took like a couple of like music theory lessons, but it's mostly just me playing violin, playing in orchestras, becoming, playing in like the Four Seasons Youth Symphony, and then kind of just dropping that when I went to college pretty much. 'Cause I just wanted to focus on film instead and focus on writing and directing. So like, but always when I was younger, music was pretty much like surrounding me in my life and everyone in my family.
And so, did you you studied directing or music?
Oh man, I never studied music in college. I was all self-taught with composing. I kind of just fell into it by accident. Like,
wow.
I'm a serial bullshitter, honestly, when it comes to every film I do. But like I just
and
learn.
Instagram.
Huh? I worked on maybe not 1,000 projects, but it'll get to 1,000 projects eventually.
You're posting ahead. Yeah, it's a scheduled post that you accidentally did too early.
Wait, so like if you self-taught, like I guess in college I had a brief stint of being a music minor. So I did like the music theory classes. And that to me is like one of the hardest things to like fully grasp around. So like you're actively making music. Did you have to like, is that any of those things and get involved with you composing now? Like
the funny thing is like music theory doesn't inherently teach you how to write music. It teaches you how to identify what you're writing and like how to like adhere to the rules and how to like break those rules you want to break them, like sure. Even like some of like the bigger A-list composers like I think Goldsmith or like some other ones, like they say like they don't really think about music theory when they're writing. They're just writing, right? Yeah. And then music theory helps with maybe just like, oh, I need to do a certain chord progression, or I need to kind of like do a certain like jazzy kind of like melody. Like how do I make it sound like jazz? How do I make it sound like pop, hip hop? Like certain like genres. How do I make it sound like a certain like genre, like era of like classical music? Like it may help with that, but I think what I learned more, what's more useful to me is like listening to music and kind of just developing a music taste and kind of like saying like, oh, these are the composers I like, not necessarily in film music, but just any different genre, right? Just like rock or jazz or, hip hop or like any kind of genre, just listening and just developing your own point of view and kind of like kind of seeing what works for you and like what's unique to you, and not trying to worry about how do you sound like this other composer or that composer. And then like I eventually picked up like music theory stuff like along the way, as like I kept practicing and I kept working on films, and I just watched YouTube videos. I talked to other composers. I read books here and there. But like when I started, it was just, I knew nothing. I was just I was a clueless little baby bird, just kind of like, I like music and I'll just keep doing it. And then it can't be that hard, right? And it was pretty hard. Yeah, it was pretty hard, but it was also kind of like,
I mean, you're doing it.
Somehow, yeah.
Do you have any like musical like influences, as you were saying, like as you were developing your taste? Like, what are your artists that you love to go to?
I mean, like, I think I would say John Williams, Johan Johansson, Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead. I like a lot of Pink Floyd stuff, like like the experimentation rock. Alejandro Desplat is one of my favorite film composers. In terms of like classical, I would say like Beethoven. Bach is probably one of the most influential like classical composers, and you hear his stuff pop up in like Hans Zimmer stuff too, right? Morricone, who like wrote like the trilogy of like Fistful of Dollars, Good, Bad, and the Ugly. He's super influential to me. I could go down the list. Grant Kirkhope for games. Joe Hisaishi, he like wrote a lot of like Ghibli films. His like Japanese harmony like is something kind of like eventually sunk in that I just want to learn more of. So like I learned a lot of his stuff. So but yeah, I could go on for hours and hours. But I would say like John Williams, James Horner, Alejandro Desplat, Johan Johansson, Johnny Greenwood, and Hans Zimmer obviously is like he influences everything.
Everyone, like he changed trailers forever with his little like
with the Inception horn,
the Zimmer horn.
Every time I do that Zimmer horn, I'm like, oh god, like I mean, like I know I have to do it. And like
you're guilty of doing the Zimmer
I've been
horn?
guilty. Yeah.
But it's classic.
Yeah,
it is.
Don't fix what's not broke.
Yeah,
Hans Zimmer's the man.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I feel like well, you know that thing where they say the beginning stages of being an artist, you're supposed to imitate somebody and then find your own taste. Do you feel like you're still in that stage where you're imitating some of like the people in how you generally approach things, or do you feel like you've already kind of developed your own thing?
I feel like I developed my own thing, like partly because like of practice, and also because I know my own limitations as a composer, and I leaned into that, and I kind of like made those limitations as part of my strengths. Because like I know I'll never be able to like write as densely as like John Williams. I'll never be able to like out Inception horn Hans Zimmer, right? So I don't try. So I just kind of like, I like the way I write these strings. I like the way I do these harmonies. Like I like these certain kind of chord progressions. I kind of adopted them my own. I feel like there's like a certain way that I do things that just like makes sense to me, that I feel like helps a lot when I work on a lot of different projects. And like, it's always hard to say, have you developed a personal style? It's not something that a lot of composers can really answer for themselves. It's just something they look back on and kind of say like, okay, this is like, I feel like this is something that I do that's a little different, right, from like what other composers do. And also like, if you keep getting hired and asked for things, like obviously like there's something that you're doing that works for directors, right? And they keep asking you back, whether it's like how you write melodies or how you respond to stories, like how do you like get inside the psyche of characters. It's like, so long story short, yes, I think I have a personal style. It's hard to say how to break it down exactly what it is, but I do have preferences for how I like to write music, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's also just so hard to even answer that. I feel like unless you're looking retrospectively, I feel like you can only be able to look back and say, oh, this is kind of become my thing, but while you're in it,
Yeah.
You kind of boots on the ground.
Yeah.
But okay, so you didn't study music, but you did some film related studies, and then
screenwriting, like directing, acting. I did some editing, cinematography. Like I worked on set, script supervising. I did production design. I kind of did a lot of different things. I tried a lot of different jobs on set before I was like, nah, I want to do music. Yeah. Like I eventually settled on music, but it's still like, I think what helps me a lot as a composer that not a lot of composers get when they just study music, right, and not study like filmmaking. I know how to communicate with the director like easily and kind of like just get to the bottom, like why music works or why it doesn't work for a film, just based on like you know, like, and just get, like, cut out all the bullshit. Like, is it because, like, the harmony's like, why does it make you feel? Like, is it making you feel this way? Like, why do you feel like it's too happy or too sad? Why does it feel too energetic, not energetic enough? Or, like, it's missing something. What is it missing? And I always try to get to the heart of that by talking, like, emotionally, right?
Right.
It's
well,
like,
you have, like, a shorthand. Like, you know where
Yeah.
they've been. So,
mm-hmm.
good way to communicate. And just, like,
Yeah.
been in your shoes or been around it.
Absolutely. No, I remember, like, one of the most difficult films I've ever worked was, like, a short film, like, with this director. He was, like, very set in his ways. He was, like late 40s, 50s. And I remember the first thing he did when he sat down with me, he was like, he had this piece of paper. He's like drawing down, like, you know, musical circle of fifths, you know, like, it's like a general term. And I was like,
what does that mean?
It's kind of like, it's hard
like a
to
chart situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry.
Like it helps with, like, understanding, like, keys
Mm-hmm.
and, like, the musical, I guess, like
like I have to, like,
flats and sharps, I guess, in certain keys, right? Like, I think that's kind
yeah, like how you, like, go from one key to the next key. Like it's like, and there's set intervals between keys, and it's hard to really explain it, especially with my, like, kind of shaky knowledge on theory, right, without having to draw it out.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, long story short is, like, I was looking at him drawing it out. I was like, oh god, I'm fucked, because he's just, like, so technical, and he focused on music in a way that was really, like, annoying and got in the way of, like, what was really effective about the film, right? And
Right.
like I feel like I like overscored the shit out of that film. Like, I put way too much music in there, and, like, he was making me, it's like a suspense film. I was, like, putting, like, little sound effects for every single thing the actress is doing, like getting out of the bed. I gotta accentuate that. She opens her eyes. I gotta accentuate that. I'm like, no, if you're, just be confident in your film and, like, let me, like, kind of accentuate it, not be like put in what's not there, right?
Sure.
And, like, it's just like I knew that was gonna be, like, a difficult relationship, because, like, it's just the way he talked. He was, like, very steamrolly in a way, and, like, I couldn't quite find a way. Like, I didn't complain. Like, the thing is, like, I don't know if it's, like, my Asian upbringing or not, but I'm very, like, non-argumentative, and I always try to, like, work with what they're giving me, right? And I try not to, like, fight too much, or, like, I try to incorporate every idea. But it was not easy, I think, like, because I think just the initial red flag of just seeing how opinionated he was about music, how he thought things should work on his film, and how little he deviated from, like, what he thought music should do, you know, it just made it a lot harder.
Right.
It's like one of those reality TV things where they just tell you what to feel with the music, like, so aggressively, like, we're happy now. And it's just like you would have never gotten there. They're just not doing visual storytelling. They're just, like, hammering you with the music. And you're like, okay, fine, I'll feel happy. Like, Jesus.
There's a certain, like, forget which Gordon Ramsay cooking show, but there's, like, a really iconic, like, gong sound that sounds like doo. And when you hear it, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's, like, the most, like, overplayed, like, some shit is happening in, like, Stakes of a Rose. And, like, there's, like, a YouTube video, like, showcasing that clip. It's, like, it has, like, a few million views or something, because everyone's like, oh, that's the Gordon Ramsay sound, because it's, like, such, like, you press a button and make suspense, pretty much, right?
Yeah,
That's what
the suspense button.
Yeah. And, like, I've not done any reality TV or, like, library music, but it's just a mentality and scoring that I'm particularly not very good at, you know, kind of like setting down a mood, right? A basic mood for, like, 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves, is when the music is just, like, so aggressively telling you things.
Yeah.
Are you now at a point where you feel like you would, if a director does do something like that, you would not take that job? Or how do you go about that if you feel like the working relationship is there's not going to be very collaborative?
I've learned to kind of identify certain red flags in directors' relationships, and I've been a little better about saying no to gigs and kind of, like, figuring out how to, like, kind of be more selective. Like, I think it's tough as a freelancer to, like, say no to things when it could be, like, feast or famine, right? You don't know when the next film's going to come along, especially when you're first starting out, and you're just always in, like, I gotta land every single thing I get. And that's why you see so many, like, A-list composers, like, they have, like, 10 to 20 TV shows they're doing a year, but they're not really writing a lot of it, because they have, like, a lot of writers, like, working for them, a lot of composers. Like, this isn't really confidential information. Like, it's kind of accepted, widely known, that a lot of, like, bigger composers will hire other people to write for them, right? So, like, there's such, like, basically there's a culture where, like, it's so hard to say no to things. So, like, what I try to do is either I will probably say no, or I'll probably just charge a little extra money and then see if that drives them away. If not, then I kind of like, you know what, like there's a checklist, right? Either you get enough money to do something, you're artistically fulfilled, or there's like a connection or like some sort of like opportunity you're going to get out of working on this film. Like you'll get accepted into a great film festival. It'll connect you with the right producers, like executive producers. So if you're not like fulfilling one of those three, or at least two of those three, then it's good to say no to film, right? So,
makes sense. Are you right now? I know you. It's a very collaborative job in the sense of like talking to directors and you're getting their vision. But in terms of the actual doing the composing and putting that together, is it kind of a one-man band, so to speak?
Yeah. It's like for now, yeah, because I sometimes work with like additional writers, but I feel I'm almost kind of like a control freak. I need to control every sound that comes out of the keyboard that I do. Like I have to kind of like write everything myself and kind of maybe have a mixer work with me to like make it sound really good for certain sound speaker systems. But otherwise, like I like to be in full control of what I'm writing. And even when I start expanding, like I know that may not be like a reality I can hold on to, because like just the sheer volume of things that composers have to work on a year, sometimes they get really busy. Like I think I was at that point earlier this year where I had to do 2 features, an audio drama series at the same time, and that's where I had to hire my first assistant actually to help me like shoulder some of like the more kind of like setting up templates and like setting down markers, getting things delivered over, just because it's not humanly possible for composers in this day and age working at the highest level to do everything by themselves. But like I try to do that whenever I can. Like I try not to, pass it off to other people.
So I guess, yeah. So when you have like an assistant or a writer a supplemental writer that you're hiring, like at what point of like, what does that, I guess, exactly mean? Like, I know you mentioned like templates and creating like, so is that mostly they're just helping with like post-production aspect of it? Or is it like,
it depends. It's like a sliding scale of like responsibilities depending on where you are. Like as like my current assistant, like Evan, he's fantastic in helping me like kind of like reducing the workload on a lot of like kind of like, I wouldn't say lower tasks, but more like kind of like non-music tasks, that like just to take time and like brain space away from actually dedicating to writing, right? So like he helps me kind of like set up templates, deliver things, kind of like conform music to like new cuts, where like if they re-edit the film, right, then we have to like retime the music to like the new cut. So he helps a lot with that. But when you're like actually writing music for a production, that's kind of a different thing. You're actually like writing your own music using another composer's themes in a way, and you have to kind of like write in their style, know how like they like use certain chord progressions, like what are their trademarks. You have to kind of learn to sound like them. Like say you're writing for Hans Zimmer, you need to know how to do like the Brahms horns. You need to know how to like mix it in a way that sounds like meaty and satisfying. You have to learn like the D minor ostinatos, like kind of like it's.
So Evan's giving the Robert sound is essentially what's happening.
I'm training him. Yeah,
that's what he has to do.
I'm definitely training because he wants to do additional writing down the road, and it's like a thing I have to kind of learn. Like, how do I distill like my like what we talked earlier? Like, what is my writing style? Like, what makes me me? How do I distill that down and like pass it down to like other people? Right? It's still, I'm like in the very early stages of that. Like, this is like the first kind of like regular employee, so to speak, that I like have in my like my team, I guess, so it's just like kind of learning the work culture of that. Like, how do I pass down like good practices? How do I not be a piece of shit like some other like unnamed composers, like like explain, how do I like not be exploitative, right? Like totally. How like it goes for anything, like a PA or in any field. Like, how do you not exploit people and like break them? How do you like build up a generation of people to
maybe start by paying Evan finally,
yeah. Oh God.
Of
course.
Internship.
Unpaid internship.
School credit.
Evan, I know you're graduated 2 years already, but like I'll get
you that minor, that music minor.
Oh God, man. I mean, there's definitely a lot of unpaid internships out there, even with like the biggest studios out there, and it's just kind of like, I think it's tough. Like, starting as a composer, like without a safety net of some kind, just because like they expect you so much to sink in so many hours unpaid labor, whether you're freelance or whether you're interning for like bigger composers. Like even before you like move up the corporate ladder, you know, you have to just invest so much unpaid time. Like that's just how the system perpetuates it for like a lot of like composers, just because that's just like there's so much competition out there, right? There's a lot of composers out there. They're all gunning for the same thing. They all want to apply for like remote control productions, like Hans Zimmer's studio. They all want to apply to these big like music like production companies, and it's just like there always will be like people coming in. So it's like I think it's composers' responsibilities to like not take advantage of that, right? To not make it like a meat factory and like have people burn out in a year or 2 years, 2 years, right? Which I've seen so often with so many composers.
Do you want to explain a little bit your pay structure that you have in place to protect yourself from all those unpaid hours? Like how do you charge somebody?
Yeah, it's like it's always tricky like to that subject, just because like it's when you're too precious about like the hours you're working as like a freelance composer, like it's kind of like you can turn away some collaborators, right? Like I have to kind of I just have to learn how long it takes to write music for a production, and kind of like figure like the overall budget for it, like kind of like from beginning to end, like if I'm gonna like write a sampled music, if I'm gonna like hire workers, musicians, if I'm gonna hire a mixer and stuff like that. Like you're basically like negotiating like an overall package rather than working like hour to hour. It's like that's kind of like the most accepted practice for most composers. And like unless you're like a video game composer, then you can like working for like a bigger company, then I assume you can pay hourly.
Yeah.
But usually it's like either I charge like per minute of music, or I just do like a estimated like this is like the package deal, right? And sometimes you may end up working more hours, and it's like you overshoot like how much time you put into it. That's just the reality of like music, because like otherwise, like if you're too precious about like, oh, like you made me spend too much time to rewrite this one piece, so I'm going to charge you extra. Like I've seen people do that, and like normally like the clients don't rehire them. They don't ask them back. They always go for like the team player, right? And it's like it's just like the reality. It's like like sometimes you wish it's like a different like way that people do things, that you can like be more structured about how you rewrite pieces, or like how much time you invest like per week. But it's just it's like the Wild West, you know, like we're all like freelancers, we're all like our own bosses with LLCs and companies, like just setting our own hours, right? So it's like hard to like coordinate that with other companies.
And then you do charge for like revisions and stuff like that, right? Like an editor would, or
no, I do not. Yeah, that's the one thing. Like some composers do, some composers don't, and I make a point never to be precious about that, just because music by its default nature is like I think like a little harder to define in what's right and what's wrong, as opposed to like kind of like editing. At least you see like sometimes like more of a linear progression in like what you're fixing, right? But music, it's like such a mysterious process that if I start making directors like stress out about how many revisions they go about, then it kind of gets in the way. Like they kind of stop before like the music is like perfected, or like it's actually like right for the film, right? Like it kind of like gets in the way to creative process. And like that's a very common viewpoint in a lot of composers, is like don't charge for revisions. Like even though like it's tempting to do so, like it just kind of gets in the way of kind of
the ultimate like
the
goal.
ultimate
and then your own portfolio kind of suffers from it too, right? If you feel like you're so close, but then they're like, oh, actually I can't do the extra so many $100, and then you're like, oh, I'm so close.
Absolutely. I mean, like, because like if you think about it, like the higher up you get, like say you're working for like Disney, or like, you know, you're working for like Blizzard, or like they're not going to give a shit about like how many revisions you've done. They're not going to cap it. You're going to work on a piece of music until you're done with it, and that means you may have to work 14 to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, get a piece of music done. And so like at that point, it doesn't even matter how many revisions you've done. Like I've heard of composers going like 100+ revisions on some pieces, like for advertisements too sometimes. And that's just the reality of it, you know? And like at a certain point, like like I think the real currency, right, of a career isn't like the amount of money you get out of a revising a piece, but kind of like building relationships with people that will stick by you and that will gun for you and that will try their hardest to pitch you for like a big studio, right? When they get like a feature film, like is the studio going to hire you or Hans Zimmer? Like they'll probably hire Hans Zimmer because Hans Zimmer is in charge of revisions. He will just work 20 plus hours a day in his like dark velvet den of a music studio, just toiling away
with his horns.
Yeah, with his horns. Yeah, his 20 trombones.
More horns.
Yeah, I don't. Oh God, he's like 30. Like I think it was like 20 trombones, like 10 tubas. Like he has so many horns, man. Like and it's
a horny guy.
He's a horny guy.
Not Hans Zimmer.
The Hans Zimmer sex appeal.
Oh my God.
It's there.
I actually have no idea what he looks like. Like, I wonder.
Six pack.
I mean, I just imagine him being like an old guy now.
He's an old like German guy. He's
like,
looks very German.
Like,
Yeah.
Mind if I'm gonna unzip my jacket real quick?
Oh, go for it. Zip away.
I don't mean to like ruin the sound. I'm just a tad sweaty, but
I was wondering. This actually, the Hans Zimmer thing kind of reminded me of this because I saw this clip of I think he was doing for Interstellar, which is one of my favorite scores of all time. And Chris Nolly said before Chris Nolly said
Chris Nolly boy. Yeah.
Chris Nolly boy said
as he's commonly known.
Before the movie even existed or the script even existed, or at least he showed it to him, he was like, this is a movie about space and a father-daughter relationship. Go. And then Hans Zimmer was like, I guess I'll do horns. Or, I don't remember what he said exactly, but he just started working. Have you ever done that where the director was like, it's going to be about this. Like, I just want to see what you come up with unfiltered or unaffected by my version of it. Kind of almost like a total collaboration, it almost feels like, because it's like 100% your version of whatever the subject is. Have you ever done that?
I don't think it's not that abstract, actually. I'm trying to think, like, because usually when I start that early, like I usually am not as close to like the spirit of what I think the music should be. Like I usually tend to be a little far off. Like, and I usually start early, anyways. I always try to sketch it. And I try to write music before like I see a cut. But usually, like I'm a very visual person. I'm a very like kind of I respond to like visuals and actors and kind of like sound and like colors, right? And like that's like I worked on a lot of animation films too, and like always like tell like animators, like even if you don't have like a reel, if you don't have like a cut or like anything for me to watch, if you have like just a color wheel of like the color scheme you have for this, even that would help me like just respond to that. So in a way, like I can't point to a specific example where I was like that abstract like Hans Zimmer was. I think that's just born out of like years and years and years of trust, right?
Yeah, because those two have done so many movies together. They kind of get each other's style. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely. Like usually I have like at the very least like a script or a synopsis, a general idea. But I think that would be fun to like kind of just go like that abstract, right? Like that would be like the next thing I'm looking for is like, and maybe with whoever like director comes back to ask me, I'm like, let's do something really weird and like
it's like
abstract.
total trust.
Yeah.
Do you ever get like writer's block ever? Like if a project comes to you, how do you combat that? I just feel like
deadlines, just panic, sheer panic and fear.
You're just like, all right, gotta figure out a melody like right now.
Oh God, yeah. Honestly, I think that going back to like earlier this year when I had to like just get like 20 to 25 minutes of music done a week, right? Like I didn't have time to even think about like writer's block. Like whenever like I just wanted to stop writing, I would just walk away, take a nap, walk, read, whatever, just stop writing music. But I would always get the work done at the end of the day. I had to, honestly. It's just sometimes like that's probably the best motivator is like fear, honestly.
I mean, I get
like not knowing what
the
hell you're
tell
doing.
Evan too, right?
Yeah.
That's good advice.
I try to shield Evan from my fear. Like I absorb all the fear in myself, but it's but yeah, I mean like I think I need that kind of like uncertainty and like fear like to kind of actually create, because then otherwise I get bored and I just like phone it in, and it's just like it's not fun when you're just sitting there like, okay, I know how it's gonna sound already before I sit down and write something, right? Like it's just there's no spark or like and like fun to it, honestly. So like I would say like when I do have like actual writer's block, I think another thing I do is like I start early. I start like maybe like a month or 2 months early before they even send me a cut. I just think about what I've read, like what they've shown me so far. I just think about music in my head. I just sketch it out, honestly. I've always been good at not procrastinating too badly. Just being
blessing.
Yeah. Wow. Tell us.
Yeah, tell us more about.
Tell us how to do that.
What's that like?
Oh God. I think I just kicked the shit out of the procrastination in me. Like I think.
And that's discipline. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great discipline.
I don't know. Like it's just years of like, especially when you work from home, right? When there's just no one telling you to get up, no one like giving you a call time, right, to show up on set or like clock in, right? It's easy to just let the day slip up past you and not get a single thing done. And I've done that too. Like I have like procrastinated in like a micro sense. Like kind of like I don't feel like working today. I'm just gonna play like Breath of the Wild or like Tears of the Kingdom all day long, right? But then like eventually like there is always a deadline, and I think from my script supervising days, like I've kind of got obsessed with kind of like Excel spreadsheets and like calendars and kind of like plotting everything out. And I have like a website called QDB where I think you might have been part of that website. I don't think you were part of that when I implemented it, but it's kind of like Frame.io. But it's kind of like it plots down the amount of music I have to write per day, like kind of like these are the cues in progress. These are like the cues on progress.
Wow.
And just
you did send me something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really cool. Like,
yeah.
Like I could go back, and there was like for every section, which I guess you call a cue, I could go back in previous revisions and see like just by a click of a button.
Yeah,
I think it was Google Sheets, right?
Yeah,
or something like that.
It used to be Google Sheets, and I went to like a website that kind of streamlined everything and made it a lot nicer looking. But I think I think I became an adult when I just derive a little too much enjoyment out of just organizing things, color coding things, and just
100%.
making. So I think that's why I don't procrastinate anymore, just because I'm just like I spend too much time honestly just scheduling things out. And my girlfriend always tells me like you're not spontaneous enough. I'm like, back in my spontaneous days, I was the worst procrastinator. I cannot like relapse back into those days ever again. I have to like, especially like right when you're your own boss, so you're just setting your own work hours. You have to have like a certain like work process to stick to. Otherwise, you just don't get stuff done, and you don't get to write a certain amount of music per day, right? It's just you just have to, it's just like with any kind of exercise, right? Just keep exercising those muscles.
Will you only do a project at a time, or will you take on like more projects?
I always take on so many. I
was gonna say that helps with the organization though.
Yeah,
like I'm sure that is like a huge part, because then it's like, well, I have to do this feature, I have to do this short, this thing. What music goes where? Like, it would just make my brain scramble.
I know.
Oh God, I love that musical chaos. Honestly, like it drives some people nuts, but I kind of love just going full 180. Like I'm gonna write an animation, like nice little up score one day, and then like electric guitars, reception horns, Trent Reznor, here we go. You know, like the next day. Like honestly, that makes it more fun for me, and like gets me out of a creative rut too. But like I like that kind of like
a little
juggling.
Spice every day.
Yeah,
like, what am I writing for?
Feeding off the chaos. I get it.
Yeah. I think I'm just like people say I'm like naturally chaotic person when I work and when I like just do things in life, and like that's why like I need the Google calendars and Excel spreadsheets and everything to control the chaos, but not rein in it completely, right? Like I need like that
some sort of structure.
Hone
it in.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost to like strip away the part of you. At least I'm talking to myself right now. Strip away the part of you that like tries to like filter or control what you really want to do. You know, I feel like that's what chaos kind of does. Like if you
absolutely
kind of like before the old trick before doing a really tough acting scene, you do push-ups or run because you like. Out of breath, and you're just like you're just raw.
Yeah.
And I think chaos
just raw
does
chaos
that, where you can't that's same thing with like the pressure, like you can't overthink it because you just have to just go, and then you kind of are able to get to this like kind of pure place of like I'm doing it.
Oh yeah, no, like the self-consciousness that you get after writing a piece of music and setting it off is like probably like the worst
Really?
time period for any composer.
Do
right?
you feel like that every single time
every
still?
Every single time. It never changes, honestly. Like, you never know like how they're going to react to a piece of music, even with like collaborators that you worked with for the longest time. You think it's like the smoothest thing, and it like just goes just left field, like nothing's working, you're just sweating, and you're like doing 8-9 different changes. And sometimes with like directors that are really like difficult, like you get it right on the first try, and you're like, I shouldn't have got that right on the first try, something is wrong, what's going on? But it just works, right? That's just, music is random, and like it's sometimes it's a little terrifying to send a piece to someone that you have no idea how they're going to react to it, right? But then like you get over it, right? That's why I like having multiple projects, because then I stop thinking about like that self-consciousness. I'm like, I don't have time to think about that. Just take it. If you don't like it, cool, I'll just change it again the next day, right? Yeah.
Do you have any horror stories about reactions you've gotten, or just people that you've worked with in general, where everything just went
I think
horrible?
like the worst note I ever got was like one of my first films I worked in. Like it was like 2016 or 17. I was like working on a student film, and the producer, I was playing this piece to the producer. It was like I had to write a yoga piece, right? And it was like the hardest thing I ever done in my life. Honestly, it was the hardest. I had to write like a background yoga piece. That stupid piece.
It seems like
the music.
The Ramsey gong.
You think it would be that easy, but I think I went through like 15 different iterations of that goddamn thing, because I had to like find a way to make it work with dialogue, right? And I had to like pick different instruments. And at some point, I found like this Middle Eastern like zurna like flute. It was like it's like da-da-da-da, like it. That's the tone of it. And I played it to the producer, and then she just looks at me and she's like, "We're never gonna talk about this ever again. Just don't."
Really?
Ever.
She
yeah.
said that?
Oh my God.
Just let's not talk about this, okay? I was like, okay, I'll move on. And then we finally got it. Like I think we were like working at in like 5 or 6 a.m. into the morning, and it was like due at like 8 or 9 a.m. I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna play. I'm gonna load up a sitar instrument, right? I'm just gonna play random notes to the screen. And then this is it, right? This has to be like, we have to finish it after. And I started playing it, and then like it actually magically worked. But I think traumatized myself to the point where I can never like really listen to sitars again until like it just immediately triggers me, and I'm just like, oh God, it's that film again, right? So, so that, I think that was like the baseline. Like, okay, this is like the worst I will ever feel on a film. Nothing else ever actually compared to that. Too bad, I don't think. Like I have to think. Well, the video game project, like I was working on a video game project, and like that got canceled, and like the rug got pulled out because the producers were investing in NFTs.
Oh my gosh. Is that why it ran out of money? Because they were just like,
their whole investment like platform was running on NFTs, and of course like it kind of like, it's a snake that ate its own tail.
Of course.
And then like it left a lot of people high and dry. Like luckily I was able to get like paid, but like a lot of people just like, because my lead composer like had a great contract and was like, I'm gonna sue you if you don't like pay us money, right? So but yeah, that was kind of like an important lesson. Kind of like, honestly, like the higher level you go, like this was kind of like almost like a AAA like game levels of budget, and like people and crew members that are working with, and like the bullshit was even worse.
Wait, so the game was fueled or like had some NFT component, or like
yeah. I mean, like I think that like from what I understand, like they actually had like legitimate like game developers on board, but the producers themselves were like NFT producers that kind of like just were trying to like use the game as a way to promote their NFTs, which I didn't know. And I'm trying to be very careful to say like what game it is, but like it's fine, honestly. Like
Modern Warfare 2.
Sims.
Minecraft 2.
Sadly, the game will never see the light of day, I don't think. But yeah, that was just like an important lesson in just having a really good contract for those kind of situations when things go belly up, right? And just everyone scatters to the wind, and like there's no money left. And like, how do you just pick up the pieces, right? When you think you like had something you thought you were set with, like that can give you consistent work, and then just stops, right? So that's just that's actually not even the first game I was working on that got canceled. I think I worked on at least 4 or 5 other indie games that just stopped. Like they canceled, they just couldn't finish. They just stuck in production forever. You know, they just it's actually very common in the game world for games to just not get done. So
do composers have a union, or do you have like any legal team to like support you on that? Like, how did your lead composer just like have the forethought to like be like, I want this contract in place. These are the rights that I'm entitled to and I want.
She had experience, I think. I think she just learned over time to like refine her contract to make sure that all her bases are covered, you know, kind of make sure that if the game studios can't just take the music and like say they're not going to use it and then use it anyways and then kind of not pay the composer. That sometimes that happens too. Like they just don't pay composers and take their music anyways and use it sometimes. Damn. There's like a very famous case of big studio fuckery actually with what was it, not Diablo. It was I have to look it up. There was like a very famous case with it's blanking in my mind right now, but like
this sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, it wasn't Diablo. It was not Duke Nukem. It might have been Duke Nukem or something, but like it was like this very famous like composer basically got so fucked over by the studio. I don't think he got paid for like 2 or 3 years. He was embroiled in a legal battle, you know, like the developer was like slandering them on Reddit on like other awful. Yeah, and just like it was
slandering on Reddit.
Yeah. Would you think it wouldn't be that hard?
Everyone gets slandered on Reddit.
But also everyone's on Reddit. Like word travels.
Yeah, you'd think it wouldn't be like that serious, but then like it really kind of destroyed the composer's reputation for a long time, and he had to kind of just fight just to even just get it done and get paid, and like he's just trying to mediate it, you know, just trying to be a good team player because composers are just like ingrained to always like work with the studio again, not demand like too much on revisions, right? Like that kind of.
There's really no representation. I mean, agents, right?
There's agents and there's managers. There's you can hire like creative like lawyers to kind of like look over your contracts for you. Like I do have I recently got an agent, and usually from this point on, like I would center my contracts for like bigger studio films and like, you know, kind of like bigger projects just to make sure things look good, and then like they work on commission. So like you do have people to like look out for you to kind of like make sure everything's in place,
but nothing like formal.
Formal, like no union. And I think the cards are very much in the studio's like corner. Like there's definitely like cases of like studios like Netflix or like National Geographic or like some other, they kind of like take away like the royalties, or trying to like cut out the profits that composers should be given, right? They're trying to like take more for themselves,
which is so wild because like music is such an integral part of any like TV show, film, like video game, like I mean, I see those videos all the time on social media where people will like swap in different musics for different scenes to be like, look at the tone, it's like completely changed. Like, so it's just wild that there's just no protection.
I'm
or
shocked
like
that there's no union.
It's even at the highest levels. Like you can absolutely get screwed over by studios if you're not careful, if you're not like, you know, specific enough with your work on your contracts. You have to like kind of make sure that things like on the more indie level, it honestly doesn't matter because there's not enough money at stake to really get screwed over. But like the more higher up you go, absolutely, like it's such a contentious subject sometimes.
All right. Well, Robert, do you want to take us through kind of some cornerstones of your career? I know we talked a little bit about the first time you said, I'm no longer doing script supervisor. Yeah. Then we have you hiring an assistant. I'm sure that's a big one.
Oh, the first time I ever worked on a feature film, actually, it was like a crazy one, actually, because that was actually back in 2018. Like that was the first feature I ever worked on. It was like this like low budget like family feature. It's called Mail Order Monster. I won't say like how. I'll try to refrain from names on this, but like the film is called Mail Order Monster. It was like a cute little family film. But the reason I got that film, like I knew the director and I knew the sound designer, but they were already working with another composer. But that composer had a complete mental breakdown, like 2 or 3 weeks before the film was like supposed to be finished, right, and delivered. And then they basically reached out to me. Like I've never worked on any feature film before. I was like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. They're like, hey, can you work on this? Like we have like 50 to 60 minutes of music. The other composer just kind of disappeared on us, like had a nervous breakdown. Like he can take his music, he can like do this, and like you need to get this done in like 2 weeks or less. And I'm like, yeah, sure. What's the worst that can happen, right? And like I had to like at some point like we had to like somehow like get the hard drives from the other composer, like out from his house when he wouldn't just like I don't know what happened, but he just wouldn't show his face in public. He was like very uncommunicative. Like we managed like
composers.
The what?
The Banksy of composers.
Yeah.
Just like, here is my work.
Comes out in a mask.
You won't know. Yeah, take it for what it is.
Didn't want to be slandered on Reddit.
Yeah.
He's just trying to save face.
Yeah, same space.
Oh god, getting those hard drives were not easy. And then like
You broke in.
Huh?
Did you break into his?
No.
Like a rock through the window.
Yeah.
Like finally, I think like the producer had to like go over to his house and like bang on the door, and then like he like composer's like, give me space. I'll just leave the hard drives outside and take it, please. I'm like, oh my goodness. Sorry. Wow. I just got to get this done. I'm sorry, And then like finally, like I was like working every single day, like from the crack of dawn until like late at night. Like I was just like never saw any sunlight on those 2 weeks, just getting everything done. Like it was like the hardest I ever worked. And like I told myself like I will never wear myself down to the bone like this ever again. It was like a very important lesson to learn. Like, and I was proud of the work I did, but it was also kind of like getting that gig in the first place was like, it was just an interesting process, I think, just dealing with, the fallout of, right, like another composer just all of a sudden leaving, and like you have to kind of like, oh God, what do I do? How do I pick up the pieces? Like, what do I keep? What do I take out? Like I have to make these choices like by
now.
Yesterday. Yeah, by now or yesterday, right? So like, I think that was like a trial by fire, right? That was the first feature I did. And I didn't get fired. I didn't have a nervous breakdown, thank God. So that went fine.
Nice.
And then let's see, like, I think I like at that point I was also script supervising. Like I was supporting myself, like working on sets as script supervisor. And I think in 2019, I told myself like I was going to just stop working on film sets actually, because I just wanted to focus full time on music because I was getting a lot more work coming in. Like I started actually getting royalties from the feature film I worked on. And I was like, okay, like maybe I can like kind of just focus on like music end of things, right? And also there was like a feature film I script supervised that drove me nuts to the point where I'm like, I cannot and will not ever subject myself to script supervising ever again on this. It was like I was like shooting in a cramped little apartment in Chinatown, and like it was like the film centered around like this guy who was playing twins, right? And then like they shot one half of the scenes, like the first week and a half. And then I was like, and then they tell me like, okay, we need to put the cameras back, right? And then like put the furniture back exactly the same way, and then like film the other half of it.
Oh no.
And then I'm like, can you at least pay? You didn't even pay for my parking, and you're not paying me much for this. And I'm miserable and I'm overworked, and I just have to like, I just can't see myself doing this for the rest of my life, right? So just like, no. I got the connections I needed out of script supervising. I'm going to go and write music now. So I just waited for like, I turned down a few more feature films, and I just waited for like maybe one I can end on a high note. And then like Tina Carbone came along. Yeah, I was like, I will end it on this one. I will make this my send off, and then deviate from that, and then just write music full time. So that was like 2019, late 2019, 2020, right?
How did that feel? I bet that must have been like, wow. Can finally just go to my passion.
Yeah, and then pandemic happened in 2020. Oh my goodness, that was interesting too. Just kind of like, right, everyone went through like a quarter life, midlife crisis, even in if you're like 20s or 30s. You just kind of redefine like what matters to you, and like kind of figure out like what are your priorities in life, and kind of like how do you kind of grow past this and become a next level version of you, right?
Right.
And I kind of like got a much better handle on my work-life balance in like between 2019 and 2023. Like I had no work-life balance, I think, when I got out of college. Like it was just I let a lot of things slide. I was kind of like letting a lot of priorities slide in like pursuit of like like making it up, like kind of getting the next project going from gig to gig. And then I think I kind of was like, that's not sustainable for the long term. I'm going to burn out. I'm going to be miserable. I'm not going to have like a good support network. I want to, there's got to be a better way to do it, right? And not just always be stressing about the gig, right? Right. Just think about how do you grow past that gig. So that was like, 2020 was a very big milestone. Like,
what did you come up with? How to make that happen?
For what?
How did you make that happen for you to not have that? Was it just rejecting some projects to be able to go on vacation or spend some time with your family?
Yeah, just like kind of, like saying no to more projects, kind of valuing myself more to charge more, right? To like kind of make better contacts for myself, to like carve out more times for friends, for family, for my partner, for doing things that aren't just music, right? Like kind of like focusing on other hobbies that aren't, it's just thinking about work all the time, right? Just enjoying life, traveling more. Like I've known so many people that just like they haven't been on a vacation in like a year and a half, like 2 years more. Like they just been working, like just working to the bone, like just and just not having time in their space in their life for just life. Just for enjoying life and just. I've learned. I think I was like I think that during the pandemic I was like I'm gonna just run a lot more, and then I probably trained to do my first full marathon, right? And I just ran the first full marathon. I was like, and just. No, I'm not gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm the guy that ran a full marathon. Oh yeah, but like it helps. Yeah.
We'll put composer and marathon runner in the description.
But yeah, it's that was definitely like a big milestone for sure. Just kind of like being a lot more confident in myself as a person and as a creator, as a collaborator, as a friend, as it's everything, right? Yeah. And then and I guess like getting an agent for sure. Like
how's that like? Like I know like Yannick was saying earlier, I came from like a management like rep land kind of background, and I know what it's like for like I guess actors and writers and such. Yeah. Is that kind of the same thing? Like are you still going, is it still the same big agencies we think of, or
it's she's mostly working by herself actually. Like it's a smaller agency. Like she has a smaller pool of clients, which I actually like wanted more, just because usually like at my level, if you get with the bigger agency, you're not really going to find a lot of time with the agents, because they're going to want, they're repping all of their clients, right? And so they're going to want to submit like their Bear McCreary's, their like Hans Zimmer's, their big A-list composers for the same gigs as you, and it's kind of hard to stand out amongst that crowd. So I found like this agent through my friend actually, who like she was repping, and he was like, hey, like you would probably a good fit for this agent. You should send her your music. I'll get you two connected. Like get a meeting with her, and I did, and luckily she liked my music, and like she started like working with me like a couple months ago. It's still pretty new, so we're still like in the pitching
figuring
phase.
It out,
and of course like the writer's strike happened, so we can't really do the normal way of like pitching for studio projects, so we're trying to find other ways to go about it, like indie, overseas, like kind of international projects, video games, stuff like that. So
you were mentioning all these different like features, animation, games. Like, do you take the same approach for like all of those, or what's that like? I guess because it's just different.
Oh, it's so
formatting
different
across the board. Like I can imagine gaming is completely different.
It's extremely
like a different narrative situation.
Yeah, everything, like even like going, like I've done podcasts too. I've done commercials. I've done like, I even like worked briefly in like an art installation once, like like that. It's like interactive kind of like music that you kind of like they had different speakers, different audio channels for like different. It was like kind of like video games, but like different too. Everything's different, honestly. Everything's just so radically different. Like every field has its own challenges. Like music can work well in film, but like if you do like that same music for like podcasts, it overwhelms the music, it overwhelms the visuals. No, not the visuals, audio. It overwhelms the audio, right? And then like video games is totally different too, because it's like, how do you make music that doesn't tire the shit out of people, like when they hear it for the 50th time, and like how do you like vary it around? Like that's a whole nother art field, like a whole nother set of skills you have to learn too. So I think like you just have to learn to be flexible, right? And just like learn from your mistakes and like recognize like what works, what doesn't work, and kind of just lean fully into it and just like ask people questions and not pretend like you know everything, right? And not pretend like you know all the answers. Like it's okay to admit if you need help.
Yeah.
Like what made you take like a new, or I guess what was so you started with features, and then what was the first deviation to like the next thing? Like when did you finally, or like, okay, I've had this under my belt, now I'm gonna try something new? I feel like that's terrifying. Like how do you like, and you're self-taught, so I'm assuming you taught yourself how to do all these new different platforms too. Like how do you just even like go about doing that? That would be terrifying to me.
Well, I think what helps is that I've never like done like I'm gonna do this and then do that. I actually started everything at the same time. Like I was doing films and I like dabbled in some games around the same time. I've done some podcasts around the same time. It all just it was like this big stew of like, I like when I started as a composer, I was like, I'm not going to do this or this. I'm just like, please hire me for whatever you want me to write music for. Because honestly, you just get more opportunities that way. You're just like, I don't know how to do this, but I'll learn how to do this. Like, fuck it, right? Just try, right? Yeah. And if you what you've done isn't like perfect, then that's fine. Just learn and then perfect it for the next approach, and then just take those skills and reapply it. And that's just yeah. But I've never like really defined myself as a film composer, as a video game composer. Like I've done, most of my output has been film, but I have pretty much tried everything since I started. So
you mentioned some different paths in terms of like joining a big, I guess you would call it a company, like with the Hans Zimmer types, or I guess the alternative is being something like that yourself, or maybe just like completely a freelancer. And kind of my question to you is, given all this stuff, and where you're at right now, which seems to be honestly a quite good place, just based on how much work you're getting and variety of work, where do you want to see yourself in 10 years' time? Where's this all going for you?
It's a great question, and that's actually something I also had to define with my agent when I first started working with her. Like, kind of like, what are the projects I want to work on, right? Because like I think at heart, like 10 years from now, like obviously I want to like be working on the projects that mean the most to me artistically, right? That kind of have the messages that resonate the most with me, that I most personally identify with. I think in this like more diverse platform where like a lot more artists are kind of getting their names out, like A24 Films, right? Kind of giving so much like diverse voices like a chance to shine and more stories. I think it's like a lot more possible, I think, for composers to kind of find the filmmakers they want to work with and not just be stuck doing like, you know, generic action film A, generic action film B, or like, you know, like kind of like be stuck in things they don't want to do, right? So like I kind of want to keep being more choosy with the projects I work on, kind of eventually steer my way towards, I think animation is kind of like the medium that gives me the most freedom to indulge in like kind of the music I like to write, right? So I think I always like tell my like people and like my agent, like other people, like the dream project, right, would be like a dark fantasy, like stop motion animation film from like Studio Leica or like some other like Netflix or something else, right? That's like the dream project. But like in 10 years, it's just like being able to work on the films that mean something to me, that I want to be passionate about writing, right? That kind of affords me the space to record with like musicians that I want to record with, that can support my family, you know, basically like kind of make a life for myself and just, you know, support myself. Like it doesn't have to be like working on like big level Marvel films, right? Or like Disney films. Like I don't need to be breaking into the very top. And like it's so stressful, right? To be working at that level. Like I just want to be able to be comfortable at like a certain level of like productions where I can still be creative, still have like the room and budget to like kind of write the music I want to write, but also not destroy like my family life, my personal life, and like sacrifice everything just to be at the top, right? Yeah. Like I want to like, I think that I guess the main priority in 10 years is still maintain that work-life balance and perfect it, I guess, in a way. Like, which I will like, especially if you're like having kids, right? Like a creative having kids in the film industry or like any creative industry, it's such a learning process. It's such like a balance, and like there's people that don't get that balance at all, and they don't talk to their kids, and they don't like talk to their family, right? So it's kind of like, how do you find that balance that works for you?
So you can have it all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
The eternal question. Yeah.
And the follow-up question is, I don't know, Sam, do you remember what the follow-up question of this one is from your episode?
Listen,
You blacked out.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh, am I going to black out?
No,
Sam
no.
was really high. Sam was really high for her episode.
Okay.
Useless.
Okay. Well, we made it through, didn't we? So,
We did.
so now I don't remember this question. It's like, what are you talking about? Oh,
no.
Is this the one where we have to say what we haven't done yet? That took a minute.
No.
Oh, really?
No, what? The question is, if the time capsule one, do you remember that? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, hit it.
No,
Okay.
I don't know it enough. You say it. You say it.
Maybe if you get high, you remember it.
Maybe.
Should we get you high?
Just like needs to be night out.
Yeah, it's dark outside. No, the follow-up question is, if this is a a time capsule, this podcast, which it is. Our entire marketing strategy is having a huge resurgence of views in about 10 years' time when all our guests are famous. So for that time, this is kind of your moment to give yourself a message that we're going to send to you in 10 years. So it can be about work. It can be about whatever you want it to be. But this is you talking to future Robert now.
Okay, future Robert. Boy.
Take your time.
There's going to be a time when you're going to get fired from the biggest project of your life. It's going to be a thing that happens to a lot of people. You're going to think you have your biggest break. You're going to be at the highest part of the roller coaster of your life, and you're going to go crashing way, way down. But you'll get back up. You will recover from it, as most composers do. You will keep your perspective on why you keep making music and why you're still in this, despite all the times you've been kicked down, all the times you've been rejected, right? All the times you've been told no and like kind of hit that wall in your career. Like every time you feel like you haven't gone anywhere and like you feel like you're like things will never happen for you, right? Just I guess just look behind you at the path you've already taken, at the films you've already done, the people you've met, the friends you've met, like the opportunities that were given to you because of like this career path that you so like spontaneously took upon, right? And just kind of, just keep some perspective that a film is not the thing that will make you or define your life. It's like, I guess it's the overall path of like your life, like the choices you make and how you recover from like the times you have been rejected and kicked down. And I know like you will eventually hit your biggest rejection of your life and you'll be okay. You'll be fine. It's going to hurt. It's going to fucking hurt. I know it will, but that's fine. It's normal. It's normal for everyone, right? Everyone like has like that one big regret, but it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to define, how you're going to tackle, I guess, the rest of the films in your life. So just don't take yourself seriously. I think it's just the main thing. Don't get your head up your ass. Just enjoy making mistakes and just keep doing what you're doing, I guess, and you'll be fine.
Nice. I like how personal you got with it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's ever really I felt like you sat yourself down and just grabbed yourself by the shoulders. God damn it, you listen up now.
Yeah. Oh, God. I've definitely had to do that many times during like the pandemic too. Like, listen up, buddy. Like,
you
buddied yourself.
Yeah,
buddy.
Look in the mirror.
Yeah.
All right. Wow. Do you have any final thoughts? Any maybe tips or suggestions for other composers? Anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I think the thing I tell most composers, like, I mean, again, I usually try not to give like actual technical music advice because I'm not qualified enough for that, honestly. There's people I always hit up for that. So the advice I always tell composers that always helped me to this point is just be curious about meeting people, like learning about the things they do, making friends, and just not always thinking about what can you do for me, but more like what can I learn from you, right? And like how can we like influence each other, enrich each other's lives, right? And kind of like get a different perspective on life. Like if you're going to a mixer event or like kind of like any kind of event, right, where you're meeting people and you just try to think about, oh, I got to get the next job, or I got to like get something out of this. Like I got to do this, and this, right? You're going to freeze up. You're not going to seem genuine. You're not going to like really get anywhere, I think. Just being more casual about it, just meeting people, right? And just enjoying connecting with creatives. Because I think like composing is not a thing you do alone. It's kind of like a collaborative. You have to collaborate with people. You have to like, same with any other job in the film industry. You have to like work with people, not be an asshole, not burn bridges, right? Like just like I think I don't think I ever really specifically burned a bridge to the point, right, where like I cussed out a filmmaker or like so I'm never gonna work with you again. Yeah, yet.
Do you think it in your head?
Yes, all the time. Yeah. But I will not name names on this podcast, no sir. But
is it me?
yeah, like once if it's Yannick.
Oh, I will plead the fifth on that, but
Okay.
no. Yeah, I mean, just enjoy it. Don't be so precious about like obviously like protect yourself from being exploited, but don't be like the person that wins the business deal, because then, sure, you may win it, but are you really gonna win? Is it really a win in the Grand Fabric career when they don't ever hit you back up again because you're being labeled as difficult? And I think like the biggest regret I've ever had actually was like back in 2016, when a Vietnamese director actually hit me up like saying like, oh, we need music for this production, it's a little low budget, like, can you do it? And I don't know like what I said, but I was basically like, no, like, I'm sorry, but this is too low for my rate. I was like just starting out. I don't know why I said that. I was like, this is too low for my rate. I don't want to take this film. I'm sorry. And then I think like just this year he like won like the Cannes like award for like best first feature, right, for a director. And I was like, tough. if I was just a little nicer to that guy and I just kind of like kept working with him, then maybe I could have been like, working on that film. So who knows? Like, you never know like where people end up like 5 to 10 years later. So just don't be that precious about it. Don't be that asshole business guy. Just just enjoy the journey. People will grow. People will have doors open that you can never fathom. So
yeah.
To the sound of the dog Jude barking, thank you for coming on and doing this. It was a pleasure having you.
Absolutely.
Say bye, Sam.
Bye.
How does your podcast theme go again? Do you have one?
Yeah. That's the new one.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
The Hans Zimmer fight.
Yeah, I was thinking how I could sneak the horns in to make like some sort of joke or something.